I never thought I'd be that professor. The one with the rumors trailing behind him like cigarette smoke. The one the younger faculty gossip about over lukewarm coffee in the break room. I was untouchable, 15 years of tenure, a respectable publishing record, a wife of 20 years, 2 kids in college. I had the life. The life that people envy and secretly hope will one day implode just so they have something to talk about. Well, it imploded. And her name is Chloe. She walked into my final seminar on postmodern narrative deconstruction like she owned the room. That sounds cliché, I know. Every middle-aged man who ruins his life says the same thing, she was different. But she was. Not just because she was 22 with the kind of effortless beauty that makes you feel ancient and electrified all at once. It was her mind. She dismantled Dorita like she was peeling an orange, then looked at me with those wide, gray eyes as if asking, did I get it right? I told myself it was intellectual admiration. Then it was friendship. Then it was late-night emails about her thesis that slowly bled into confessions about her alcoholic father and the boyfriend who didn't get her. I told myself I was being a mentor. A protector. The line crossed one night in my campus office. She'd come to discuss her final paper. It was 11 p.m. The building was empty. She was wearing a thin cashmere sweater that kept slipping off one shoulder. I remember the exact moment my brain stopped being a brain and became a hormone with a PhD. She leaned across my desk to point at a paragraph, and her perfume, something floral and obscenely young, filled the space between us. I've wanted this since the first lecture, she whispered. And I, the tenured professor, the man who'd lectured on ethics for 2 decades, kissed her. That was a year ago. The line crossed one night in my campus office. She'd come to discuss her final paper. It was 11 p.m. The building was empty. She was wearing a thin cashmere sweater that kept slipping off one shoulder. I remember the exact moment my brain stopped being a brain and became a hormone with a PhD. She leaned across my desk to point at a paragraph, and her perfume, something floral and obscenely young, filled the space between us. I've wanted this since the first lecture, she whispered. And I, the tenured professor, the man who'd lectured on ethics for 2 decades, kissed her. That was a year ago. The sex was incendiary. I'm not proud of that word, but it fits. It wasn't just the physical. It was the feeling of being seen. After 20 years of a marriage that had settled into polite companionship, Chloe looked at me like I was still capable of burning something down. She made me feel young, reckless, alive. I started dressing differently. I started listening to the bands she liked. I started believing that maybe I'd been asleep for 2 decades and she was the alarm clock. I was a cliché. And I didn't care. She graduated in May. Summa cum laude. I sat 3 rows behind her family at the ceremony, watching her father sob with pride while I thought about the hickey I'd left on her collarbone the night before. She walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, and caught my eye with a smile that said, "Now we can be real." I thought we were finally safe. No more student-professor dynamic. No more Title IX nightmares. Just 2 adults, free to be together. That's when the walls started closing in. My department chair, Dr. Patricia Holloway, has hated me since I beat her out for a research grant 5 years ago. She's the kind of academic who wields bureaucratic power like a scalpel, precise, sterile, and devastating. She's been waiting for a weakness. 2 weeks after graduation, she called me into her office. The blinds were drawn. On her desk sat a folder. She didn't ask me to sit. "I know about the girl," she said. My blood turned to ice water. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Chloe Masterson. She slid a photograph across the desk. It was grainy, clearly from a security camera, me and Chloe entering the off-campus apartment at 1:47 a.m. You've been keeping company with a former student. A student who was in your seminar when this began. It started after she graduated, I lied. The camera timestamps suggest otherwise. She tapped the folder. I also have emails, text screenshots, and a very compelling account from one of her former roommates. Shall I go on? I sat down, suddenly unable to feel my legs. Here's the thing about Title IX, it doesn't care about tenure. It doesn't care about my decades of service or my publication record. If Holloway takes this to the office, I face a formal investigation. Even if I'm not fired, and I probably would be, my reputation would be ash. My wife would find out. My children. My colleagues. Everything I built would dissolve in a scandal that would follow me to my grave. What do you want? I asked, my voice hoarse. She smiled. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting 5 years for this moment. The promotion committee meets in 3 weeks. I'm on it. You're up for full professor, the highest rank. You've been lobbying hard. I'm prepared to recommend a denial unless you meet a few conditions. Conditions? First, you end things with Miss Masterson. Immediately and permanently. Second, you withdraw from the search for the new department head position. I'll be putting my own name forward, and I don't need competition. Third, you transfer the research grant you're overseeing to my lab. Quietly. No fuss. I stared at her. You're blackmailing me. I'm providing you with an off-ramp. She closed the folder. You have 1 week to comply. If I don't see evidence that you've ended the relationship and withdrawn from the search, I walk this folder to the Title IX coordinator myself. I'll also make sure a few choice details reach your wife. She teaches in the English department, doesn't she? I imagine she'd love to know about the apartment on Maple Street. I walked out of her office in a fog. I sat in my car for an hour, gripping the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe. I told Chloe we needed to talk. She came to the apartment with takeout and a bottle of wine, still wearing her graduation tassel around the rearview mirror of her car like a trophy. I have news, she said, kissing me before I could speak. I got into the PhD program at Columbia. I'm moving to New York in 2 months. My heart stopped. You didn't tell me you applied. I wanted it to be a surprise. She beamed. We can do long distance for a year, and then you can take a sabbatical and join me. We can finally stop hiding. I should have told her then. I should have said, my career is being held hostage. We're being blackmailed. I have to end this. Instead, I said, that's incredible. And then I let her undress me, because for 1 hour I wanted to pretend I wasn't the coward she was about to discover I was. The days that followed were a masterclass in compartmentalization. I told Holloway I was working on it. I went through the motions of withdrawing my name from the department head search, citing personal reasons. I started drafting an email to the grant officer about transferring the funds. But I couldn't end it with Chloe. Every time I tried, I'd see her face, the way she looked at me like I was the first man who ever truly saw her, and I'd swallow the words. I told myself I'd end it after one more night. Then after her graduation party. Then after she left for New York. Then Holloway's deadline came and went. I got an email from her at 8:14 a.m. on the 7th day. Subject, final notice. The body was 3 words, I'm moving forward. I drove straight to her office. I didn't knock. She was on the phone, but she hung up when she saw my face. I've done what you asked, I said, my voice trembling with rage. I withdrew from the search. I'm transferring the grant. Just give me more time to end things properly. She leaned back in her chair. You're lying. You saw her 2 nights ago. The apartment on Maple. You think I don't have someone watching? My stomach dropped. You're having me followed? I'm protecting the university from liability. She stood up. You've had a year to be a fool. I'm done waiting. The Title IX report goes in tomorrow morning unless you deliver a signed and notarized statement from Miss Masterson acknowledging the relationship has ended. And I want it by 5 p.m. today. I laughed. It was a hollow, broken sound. You want me to get the woman I love to sign a breakup affidavit? For your blackmail file? I want you to do whatever it takes to clean up your mess. She picked up her phone. Tick-tock, Professor. I drove to the apartment in a haze. Chloe was there, packing boxes, her hair tied up in a messy bun. She smiled when she saw me, but it faded when she looked at my face. What happened? I told her everything. The security camera photo. Holloway's ultimatum. The blackmail. The deadline. I left nothing out, not my cowardice, not my attempts to comply, not the fact that I'd been stringing her along for a week while pretending everything was fine. She listened in silence. When I finished, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her hands. So what now? She asked quietly. I don't know. I sat beside her. If I don't give her what she wants by 5, she destroys us. My career. My family. Your reputation. They'll paint you as the seductress who preyed on a vulnerable professor. Or me as the predator. Either way, we both lose. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Something cold. Calculated. What if we don't play her game? She said. What do you mean? I mean, what if we go to the Title IX office first? I blinked. You want to report us? No, she stood up, pacing. I want to report her. For blackmail. For extortion. For creating a hostile work environment. She's been following me? Having someone watch the apartment? That's stalking. She used her position to demand you withdraw from a promotion and transfer a grant. That's abuse of power. But if we go to Title IX, they'll investigate the affair anyway. It'll all come out. Maybe. She turned to face me. Or maybe they'll be so focused on her misconduct that they'll have to tread carefully. You're tenured. The affair is unethical, but it's not illegal. What she's doing is both. And I have evidence. What evidence? She pulled out her phone. I recorded our conversation 2 nights ago. When you told me she was blackmailing you. I thought you might need proof someday. I didn't think it would be this soon. I stared at her. For a moment, I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. She wasn't the wide-eyed senior from my seminar. She wasn't the girl who whispered sweet nothings in cheap motels. She was someone else entirely, someone who'd been keeping her own secrets. Why did you record us? I asked slowly. She met my gaze without flinching. Because I knew something like this might happen. I know how the world works, Professor. I'm not naive. I'm the one who walked into your office at 11 p.m. in a sweater that kept falling off my shoulder. I knew what I was doing. And I knew that if this ever blew up, I'd need leverage. The room felt suddenly very small. You seduced me, I said, the realization settling in my bones like poison. I fell in love with you. Her voice softened. That part is real. But I'm not a child, and I'm not a victim. I'm a woman who saw something she wanted and went after it. And now I'm the one holding the cards. She held up her phone. Do you want to be a pawn in Holloway's game, or do you want to fight? It's 4:30 p.m. now. I'm sitting in my office, staring at my computer screen. On it is a draft email to the Title IX coordinator, outlining Dr. Holloway's extortion, with a compressed audio file attached. Chloe is in the apartment, waiting for my call. She says she'll testify to everything. The timeline of the affair, the security footage, the surveillance. She'll paint Holloway as a predator who exploited her own position to destroy a colleague. It's messy. It's ugly. It might still cost me my marriage, my reputation, my career. But if I don't send it, I lose everything anyway. And I lose Chloe in the process. My finger hovers over the send button. I can hear Holloway's voice in my head, tick-tock, Professor. The cursor blinks. The email sits there, waiting. I don't know which path is destruction and which is salvation. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe I crossed that line the night I kissed a student in my office, and I've been hurtling toward this moment ever since. One thing I know for certain, when you spend a year building a life on lies, you don't get to choose how the truth comes out. You only get to decide whether you face it on your knees or on your feet. My finger presses down. Send. Now I wait. And I wonder which version of myself will survive the fallout, the professor, the lover, the liar, or the man who finally stopped running. I'll update when I can. If I can.